Hi everyone, this is Mike at BrashMonkey with a slightly different kind of tutorial this time. This time I'm going to cover creating pixel art with Spriter. And what I don't mean is animating pixel art within Spriter. What I mean is using Spriter as part of a sort of workflow pipeline to end up with pixel art as your final product. Now, many of you probably already know that when you're done creating an animation in Spriter, you can always export that animation as sequential PNG images. As you can see here, you just choose where you want them to go, enter a name for your frames, and then choose if you want to only save out the keyframes or if you want a specific number of images, and it'll divide the animation evenly between that many frames, or if you want to designate a specific frames per second. So in other words, if you wanted the walk cycle animated at 24 frames per second, you just enter 24 here, and it'll calculate how many images that'll be. Because this walk cycle is exactly 1 second, then it's exactly 24 frames. And then you would just click OK, and that would export your walk animation for you. And this, of course, is very useful if you're working on a game or creating art for a game that does not yet support the actual Spriter data format. So as a sort of real-life example of this, here's a simple game that I made, and I needed some very basic animations for the player character here, this turtle. And as you can see, for most animations, we've just got the shell, the forelegs, the tail, all with very simple movements involving a little rotation and sometimes a little stretching. And I did that using Spriter. Now, I know a lot of you might be shouting at your screen, that's not pixel art, and don't worry, I know that, but the first half of the process of generating pixel art using Spriter is the same as just exporting 24-bit anti-aliased art from Spriter. So bear with me a moment. You'll see here is the final anti-aliased 24-bit death animation for the turtle here. You can see just these two simple frames. Alright, and that was just exported from Spriter. I'll actually load up the turtle Spriter file now so you can see that. Might as well close this one. And turtle. Okay, so you can see here I'm using very few body part images, just the legs, the neck, the head, tail, 2 shell segments, and that's about it. Simple bone setup and very few frames, and that's enough to give me the movement I need, especially because the final resulting character is so small on screen. Now for the actual tutorial part of this video, you'll notice, let's go to the actual death animation here. You'll see this is 100% size. You'll see it's actually quite large, especially compared to, here's the full size of the character sprite for the game itself. So you'll see it's a lot smaller in the finished game art. And the reason I do that, I always work, usually I choose about 4 times the end size that you need, and there are several reasons for this. So the first big reason is when you're working large, you can work a lot faster and sort of sloppier because the artwork is going to be reduced quite a bit for the final result. It really does a ton of cleanup for you. There's little imperfections are just going to completely disappear in the reduction process. And the other really big benefit of working large is that if you end up needing larger resolution art for marketing art, banners, animations, or cinematic parts of your game, then you actually have them. Or let's say in the future you end up needing to do a higher resolution version of the game or a sequel or something like that, because you've done it a lot bigger than the size you initially needed. You can just use that, and in the case of Spriter, it's even tweened, so if you want to export it at twice the frame rate, or actually use the Spriter file so it's silky smooth tweened animation, then you already have all of that work sort of for free, instead of having to do that terrible thing and upscale and try to clean up artwork that you did at a small size to try to make larger size, which is just incredibly time consuming. But there is one really important thing to keep in mind when you're working at a much larger size than the end result. You really have to keep in mind, while you're working on it, the actual final size of the art, because it is incredibly easy to waste a ton of time adding all kinds of tiny little details that are just going to completely disappear or actually look really bad in the final reduced art. So you can see how incredibly simple this artwork is, with very thick lines and no shape or line is even remotely small. And that's because not only did I want a very clean, cartoony look for this particular game, but the sprite is so small, any other detail would either disappear or just look like a pixelated, kind of staticky mess in the overall shape. So it's really important when you're initially creating your body part art in Spriter at the 4x size, or however much larger you want to work. When you think you're getting close, like every once in a while, just do a test reduction to the final size to see if the line thickness is holding up where you want it to be, and to see if the details are looking good. Don't waste your time doing tiny little details or thin lines that you're either going to have to redo thicker or simplify, or that just end up making your art look bad. But now on to what would happen if we wanted to make this guy into actual indexed color, low resolution pixel art. Okay, so your first step is the same, or I should say your first step once the animation is designed in Spriter at the larger size. You of course export your animations to your desired frame rate into a folder, as I have here. I'm just going to work with 3 images to make things very quick. There they are. It's part of the eating animation. And you're going to need a graphics program that can do batch processing, and for a lot of you people that are already graphic artists, you might have Photoshop. There's actually a plugin I recently discovered for GIMP that allows you to do some batch processing, so that might work for you, and it's free. Your other option, another free program that I use sometimes, is called EarthFinView. Yep, there it is here. I don't even know if this is the latest version. It probably is not. A lot of people just use this as an image viewer, but it actually is capable of doing a lot of conversions and even batch processing. So the first thing you're going to want to do in preparation is, and I'll just drag one of these images in here for now just so you can see, it's important, sorry about that, I just did a mouse wheel roll accidentally. But anyway, you can see here, the first thing you're going to want to do is make sure the background color for the image is something that is not too much like any of the colors or even the outline colors used in your artwork. And the way to do that, I just checked. If you might notice, the color just changed while I wasn't recording. I was checking to make sure I remembered how to do this. You click on this little wrench and screwdriver icon here and click on viewing, and you'll see this color bar for main window color. Click choose, and then you just pick a color, and again just make sure it looks nothing like any of the colors in the actual sprite itself. Something like this will be fine for our needs, and I'm going to click OK and click OK, and don't worry, you'll see here that it's still surrounded with this other color. That's sort of a bug. Don't worry about it. You'll see if I drag the image on again, then it updates and it's got your new background color. So now that that's done, we're going to create the actual batch process. Okay, so I should point out before we begin the batch process that these turtle frames are already the final size for my game, so they're already fairly small. So I'm not going to reduce them to 25% because they'll be really tiny. So let's just reduce them by 50%. It'll still be very low resolution, but it'll get the point across, and it won't be too tiny. So here we go. We're going to go into File, Batch Conversion Rename, and then we're going to choose Batch Conversion Rename Result Files. We're going to make sure it says PNG. We're going to choose PNG, and then under Options, make sure Save Transparent Color is not checked, and make sure compression level is set to 0. Okay, because we don't want any lossiness to the or corruption to the image data, and we want to get rid of the alpha blending, and we want that color in the background. And that's it. Make sure, again down here, make sure Save Transparent Color is off, and make sure Use Main Color for Transparency is on. Click OK. And your next step is to make sure you use Advanced Options for bulk or size is checked. Click on Advanced, and then you've got a lot of options here. The ones we need are Resize, so make sure that's checked, and then go down here to set new size to a percentage. And we're going to go, like I said, only 50% because it's already quite small. Preserve aspect ratio is good, and then we do want to change the color depth. This is the first step of making it into actual indexed color pixel art. Not only making it smaller, but making it indexed color with no transparency. Let's use custom colors, and it's pretty safe to bring it down for most types of artwork, sprite art, to 128 colors. I wouldn't go much lower with this automatic process. I find you always get better results if you do some of the color reduction by hand, so I only bring it down like to about 128 with the automatic process, and then I'll show you the manual process I use in another program. That's it for those settings that we need here, so we click OK. And then this is important too, we check our output directory. Make sure, for the sake of not having to create another folder or anything, knowing where to find it, I'm going to use the current look-in directory, which is where our files are. So you just, in the look-in, you find your images where that you want to process, and you can just choose Add All. So these are the ones that are going to be affected, and they are going to, the copied versions or the batch converted versions are going to end up in the same folder. And that's it. And we just click Start Batch once they're all in this window here. There we go. We can click Exit Batch. And if I double click here, you'll see the indexed color, low resolution. It's the beginning of pixel art there. Okay, so now we're at the point where we have our animation frames batched and indexed. We need to go into an actual program that's strong with editing indexed color images. I highly recommend ProMotion. I've been using it for well over a decade. It's kind of the industry standard for animating actual low-res, low-color pixel art, making tile sets and things like that. It is not a free program. There's a free version last I knew, but I don't know if it has the features that I'm going to be showing you, but well worth looking into. Aside from that, just use whatever program you're comfortable with, but the process I'm going to show you sort of evolved with my workflow over the years using this specific program, but the concept should be similar. So I'm going to load up ProMotion, and the first thing I'm going to do once it's loaded up is choose Animation, Load, Append a Single Images, and this lets me oops, the default desktop, where is it, blank desktop, there we go, example batch, and then I'm going to choose these 3 frames. Click on yes. Okay, so now I have the 3 frames in ProMotion ready to edit. Right? And I could start editing now, but that would be jumping the gun. I like to stay really organized and basically save as much time as possible with my workflow. So what I do next is choose Animation, Create Anim Strip Image, and then it'll ask you frame palette not equalized, not equal, do you want to equalize, and I'll choose yes, and then this dialog comes up, which is great. It lets you choose to use the current palette of a specific frame, or to optimize a palette, or to reduce the colors to a specific number. Again, I really don't recommend going any lower than 128, and we'll try that actually right now. 128, reduce number of colors, and then make sure that dithering is not turned on, and then that's fine. So now you'll see I have all 3 frames on one image, and the reason I do this is because I'm going to start the color reduction. Before I bother getting in here and editing specific pixels, erasing and changing, I really should do my color reduction process. Okay, so here's how I color reduce, and this is the other reason it's so important to have all of your frames on one image, or so much better. As you color reduce, you'll see immediately if one of your colors you're getting rid of or changing has a bad effect on one frame in particular, whereas if you're working on each frame individually, you might not see until it's too late that you've created a palette that just does not work for that particular frame. So what we're going to do now is simply use the fill tool and remove isolated fill. Okay, so I chose the fill option, and I got rid of isolated fill. That means, and I'm going to pick a color, pick the background color, and now all of the other colors that are the anti-aliased blends from that color into the other parts of the turtle, I'm going to just click on, and everywhere over the entire image that there's that color, it replaces it with the background color. So this is the really fast way to get rid of the anti-aliasing blurry colors that you don't want. So you just look for them in any particular frame and just start to get rid of them. And you'll notice some of the darker ones, it might be a better decision to leave them there for now and then just replace them with one of the dark colors for the stroke. Which I will do because it allows you to sort of keep the form better, so you won't have to sort of reimagine while you're touching up the outline of the sprite character. But as you can see, we're already making some really good progress. And then we can do colors, remove unused colors, and then that brought it down to 116 colors, and then remap colors. There we go. So we're just going to keep doing this to reduce colors. We've gone as far as we want to with the stroke, but you'll see if you don't want all of these really subtly different colors in here, you can just pick one of those colors. For example, these 2 colors are very similar, or these 2 are very similar, so you could just choose one of the colors and then click on the other. So you'll see, you'll obviously get a more and more crisp and sort of old-fashioned pixel art feel the more colors you reduce. Your average Sega Genesis or Super Nintendo or Neo Geo sprite was 15 colors in clear. So it depends on how sort of hardcore you want to be about this, but that's the general idea for color reduction. And then you just, every time you use this trick, like here there's 2 greens that are almost identical, so I'll just pick the brighter of the 2 and then fill in the darker one. And then same thing here, there's 2 very similar colors. So you can just keep doing that and quickly reduce your colors. There you go. But I don't want to do that too much. You get the idea. You just do that as much as you feel is right, and you can always undo if you think you've gone too far, or if it just caused too much, if it just hurt your image, to reduce it to that degree. And then once my actual color reduction were done, the last step would be to pick your dark stroke colors and start to sort of repair where the, removing the blurry, there we go, removing the blurry colors sort of went too far. Get rid of all of those unwanted purple colors in the process. and just go around your sprite or your image. And always, a great thing about promotion is while you're working here, you can see the actual, like you're working here enlarged, but you can keep looking over here at this this window, which shows you the actual resolution, so you can always know if you've gone too far, or if you need to go further still in your cleanup process or your stroke. So that's it. You just move around and start to clean up the outline of everything, getting rid of those purple colors wherever you see them, wherever they were left. And you'll see, in this case, for this style of art, I don't just go with a sort of a black stroke around everything or a dark color. I use a different dark color if I'm stroking or doing the outline of the shell. Then I'll use a darker version of the shell color. Down here where the shell is darker, I use a darker color still. And then, for the green body parts, I'm stroking with green. Pretty basic stuff for pixel art. But anyway, that's the idea, and you just keep cleaning up as you need, fixing the strokes and the shapes. And that's it. And then it would just be continue to clean it up, but I think you get the idea. And that's it. And especially for complex characters that are moving a lot of parts with a lot of detail, you're just going to save yourself so much time initially creating the animation in Spriter, because you only have to draw a few body parts. And then the cleanup process can go very, very quickly. And that all, of course, depends on how low the resolution you're converting to, and all of those things. But it really saves an enormous amount of time, and it ensures that things always maintain the exact right shape and scale relative to each other throughout the animation. So I hope this was useful for you. Thanks a lot for watching.